911, what are you reporting?
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
Damn it, I'm really confused. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence, and he was dead when she hit the ground. I didn't see any cars. All I saw was my dog coming over the fence.
What are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was?
It was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better...
Sure.
Dia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Hey guys, and welcome to this week's special episode of Sasquatch Odyssey. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us for the show. It is Sunday, and as promised, we are back with your bonus show. We've got that great guest lined up. We've got Steve Coles, who's going to come on and hopefully dispel some of those rumors and set the record straight on the Patterson Gimlin film. But as always, I want to start by inviting you. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. You can get me at brian@sasquatchodyssey.net. If you haven't already done so, go over and check out the premium content section. You can become a member there, get the additional shows, get everything that comes along with being a crew member. I do want to take a second and just thank you guys that have went over and become members of the show. Your monthly membership and your monthly subscription to the show for the extra content helps the show tremendously. It helps keep the show going, actually. It's one of the reasons that I'm able to keep doing the show week after week and putting out the shows and bringing on the guests that we bring on. I also did a donate button on the website for you guys. If you don't want the monthly subscription, if it's not that big of a deal to get the extra content and those kind of things for you, you can go over and hit the donate button. I want to send a special thanks out to Steven from Reno, Nevada, for your donation. You are the first and only donation to Sasquatch Odyssey, man. So I really, really appreciate you showing how much you enjoy the show by taking the time to go over and hit the donate button and send a few bucks this way to help keep the proverbial lights on. So I really do appreciate it, man. And anybody who wants to go over and donate, you can do that at the website, sasquatchodyssey.net. There's a donate button on basically every page. So enough of that. We do have Steve Coles coming up. He's on the line. He's ready to go. This is a little different show, obviously, but I felt it was sort of important. I've done some shows for the members recently on the Patterson Gimlin film and The Hoax of the Century by Greg Long. Steve and I talk a little bit about that in this episode coming up. So I just felt it necessary to sort of clear the air, right? The Patterson Gimlin film is one of the biggest things that's happened to the Bigfoot world in my lifetime. But it's one of the biggest pieces of evidence that has been mulled over and talked about for decades and decades and decades. And Bob Gimlin is obviously still alive. So I thought it was very important when these accusations come out about this thing possibly being a hoax. We need to take that seriously, right? Steve, he's one of those guys that's very serious about what he does. He's an investigator by trade. And when his name was brought into this, he felt compelled to come out and address it. So I can't thank Steve enough for coming on the show. I'm glad that he's going to take the time to talk to us and sort of clear up those rumors. But I'm rambling, so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to start the music and we're going to get over and talk to Steve. So you guys sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, folks, I want to welcome Steve Coles back to the show. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you. Good to be back.
Absolutely, man. It's good to have you on, and I guess we'll just get right into it. Anybody in the Bigfoot world over the last week or so has probably heard about this scuttlebutt with the Patterson Gimlin film and Rick Riello coming out and sort of opening this can of worms. So if you would, for those that don't know maybe what's going on, can you just sort of tell us what happened with that whole situation on Reddit and where the situation sort of...
Well, Richter had made a post, I'm guessing now it's pretty close to a couple of weeks ago, basically stating that there had been some confession video made regarding Bob Gimlin, and that I heard and that Russell LaCourt had told him, and that I heard the same thing.
That's sort of what I got out of the situation. Yeah. And so what is there to that? Where did that come from Richter? Do you...
Well, where that came from was, well, first of all, let me predicate that by saying I didn't even know Richter had put that post out until a good maybe 12 hours or so after he put it out, when my phone started blowing up on the whole thing. So I wasn't told before he put the post out. I wasn't told after he put the post out. Actually, it was somebody else that told me he put the post out. So I had no clue this was coming. And basically what it does, it stems from a conversation that Russell had with Richter and I back, mine was about 15 months ago. Richter, maybe, 2 or 3 months prior to that, I believe. Because Richter had actually told me that, Russell had said that, and I'm not going to parse words. Richter had said that Russell had said that, Bob had elicited some sort of confession, and, and I kind of just blew it off. I was at work at the time, and I was like, oh, this has got to be a story. Well, then a few months later, Russell tells me what I believe to be something very similar. Now, Russell, in talking with everybody, and this is what it comes down to, is that, the first person I called after, I heard about that was Russell. And Russell started talking about, other people that he did not mention in our conversation specifically. So I really thought at that time that, Russell was just, backpedaling on it and lying to me. But in high insight now, I don't believe he was. I actually talked to Richter a week after all this stuff started going down. And I was like, okay, so what did he say about this confession video? Because I don't recall. And I've always maintained I never heard anything about a confession video. But he had, and Richter had said, well, he said that, that the film isn't what it was supposed to be. And, that he was trying to get, Bob Hieronymus and Bob Gimlin together. So I guess Richter made that assumption that there was a confession video. I didn't, Russell has said the same thing to me, but I didn't take it as there being a confession video. In fact, when I got off the phone with Russell, it did sound like in, beating around the bush. You do not say to any Bigfoot researcher, the film isn't what people are what they think it is. Or Bob said the film isn't what people think it is, and mentioned, getting Bob Hieronymus and Bob Gimlin to sit down together, because what's that connotation? What am I thinking? I'm not thinking about the documentary Russell was supposed to be making. I'm thinking about, when you say the film, I'm thinking the Patterson Gimlin film. So he had done this twice, and you have two people that went, hey, this is what was said. So in a way, there's some fault there. When you beat around the bush and you try to limit some stuff, that's how misunderstandings and stuff can spiral out of control. Now, mind you, I was told this a few months before, Russell had talked to me about it. And, I, in my own fairness, have to think, was I confirmation biased to hear this? And that could have assisted in my interpretation of what Russell was saying. Is it possible? Yes. Do I think so? No. I really think that, 90% of us would have walked away with, if we didn't ask questions. And again, I was so stunned by it, I didn't ask questions. I was like my mouth gaping open. And I immediately turned to my girlfriend after I got off the phone with Russell. I'm like, you're not, this is the first time, you're not going to believe this, but he just told me that, the whole Patterson Gimlin film thing is fake, is a hoax, but in actuality, again, another misunderstanding. So there's some, and in talking with Russell, and we man to man, and I apologize for calling him a liar about this. And we had actually, I told him point blank, you got to weight some of that responsibility, because you didn't have just one person misunderstand it. You had two. So let's take the emotion. And it was a conversation I had with Richter, too, just prior to me kind of saying, listen, this could be this is a misunderstanding. Now I'm starting to see the big picture. I let emotion get out of this, and I wasn't emotionally attacked. I know Richter and Russell had some grievances amongst one another over the last, I don't know how long, several months maybe. I don't have that with either one. So I'm able to kind of look at the situation without emotion, and I don't think, and I explained that to Russell too. I don't think Richter was saying this out of malice. He was saying it out of malice, but he wasn't making anything up. That's what he thought he had heard. Just as I heard the same thing. Now again, Richter's interpretation is a little bit different than mine, but you see, basically, I wrote a little piece on my Facebook page yesterday in a comment. Is that, well, somebody said, they're very disappointed for me not sticking to my guns. Well, there's times to stick to your guns and there's time not to. When you have evidence, rock solid evidence, you stick to your guns. When you have interpretations by different people, then you have to assess that. And if we just stick to our side, our original side, without looking at the real facts of the matter, then sticking to your guns becomes something far worse. It's called tunnel vision. And that is usually, motivated by ego. And that's something that does not belong in this field at all. It does not belong in science. Although it's been, that has placated, or rather plagued science and investigation throughout history. So, when I got talking to everybody, it made, some of the things that Richter said fit perfectly with some things Russell had said, and it kind of fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. So I could begin to start to see where, but, all of us, myself included. Did I jump the gun on it? Yeah, absolutely. I believe I did. But then again, if this was a lie, which it was not, my game was to get ahead of it before I get blindsided again. And that's something I did not want to do. And like I said, my phone was blowing up all day long and people were asking me, is it true? Well, what's true? Is what Russell told Richter true? Is the Patterson Gimlin film a hoax? Is that true? The questions were so. It was like the questions were vague too. So it was like, well, I can't answer that without. So rather than, making a long dissertation or for each individual, I decided to go on the air, and a lot contextually, that's what I believe I was told. What I said was the truth, and the fact of what was said to me. Its interpretation was different.
Let's just go back to that for a second, just so I'm clear, and so everybody that's listening to this is clear. What was said to you? I know you can't speak to the Richter and the Russell conversation, but what did Russell say directly to you that led you to believe that's what he was inferring in that conversation?
Well, he said that I'm doing this film with Bob, and Bob. Bob. And he either said Bob said the film isn't what people think it is, and boom, when Bob said the film isn't what people think it is. And then it was predicated, and then it was followed up by, well, I'm trying to sit Bob Hieronymus down with Bob Gimlin, and, and we started talking, and, he admits that he had some doubts of the film himself. So you packaged it all together. Bob said the film isn't what people think it is. You don't, according to Russell, that was, he was referencing to his documentary about Bob. So that's what was said to me. And, then you have this whole confession video thing. And that's when I talked to Richter, and, I was very plain. Richter, what was this confession video? Well, he was supposed to get Bob Hieronymus. Well, he was supposed to get Bob Hieronymus and Bob Gimlin together and do this video. So my point being is that, there was no confession video of Bob saying, yes, it's all fake. That in actuality, what it was trying to get these guys together to kind of go back and forth. And that's the way, and you understand when you're trying to avoid, and Russell basically clarified to me what some of the content is on that documentary he's doing. And he asked me to keep that, between us, and I will. But now I'm in a little better understanding of why this may want to be waited until Bob passes. Now it all made sense what he had caught on video. Oh, because I had known about a couple of these things. I just didn't realize that Russell was actually filming that. So I had heard this had happened through the grapevine, and then Russell confirmed that he filmed this stuff, and that's part of the documentary, and I understand it now. So
yeah, the extra context always helps, right? When you have this conversation, because I very much like you. If I'd had that conversation with Russell and he told me what he told you, I mean, what else is there other than the PGF, right, that he could be talking about? But he is doing this documentary film with Bob, so given that context and the explanation, I totally understand it. It just fascinates me how these things grow and exponentially in the community. Some of the things I've seen online, and of course the people that jump on the bandwagon and they've always doubted the film. And I'm in the Coalition for Critical Thinking group on Facebook with Stephen Strufert. I actually had Steve on a couple of weeks ago. I interviewed him for the show. His episode will be coming up in a little bit. I love Steve, man. I think he's great. I think he's a great voice in the Bigfoot community at large, but everybody started jumping on this bandwagon of, here we go. We knew it was fake. And then they start just tearing everybody down that's associated with it. And I'm like, hold on, guys. I've had doubts about the film myself. I think you and I talked about that the first time you were on the show.
Absolutely. And you know what? The funny thing is, and what gave me the doubts was what Russell had told me. When here I am going, there was a confession made. So let me start looking at this because I wanted validation for myself. So, but now that I've realized that, hey, this was never said, now I'm bouncing back on, well, if anything, the stuff that I found out, we need to better, if we want to be behind the film, we have to better defend it because we're defending it on some wrong arguments that people who critically think and people who have the facts can argue it back very easily and make us look foolish. It's really kind of funny because, when John Green made a statement that, Roger Patterson, could not make a suit, that was anatomically correct. Well, number one, we know that's kind of not true because number one, his own Roger Patterson's own brother said he was very artistic and he was a genius. Roger liked to paint. How do we explain that painting of a Sasquatch with breasts in 1966? We can't. Roger can, actually we can. Roger did allegedly copy that off of another drawing that he had seen. So a lot of this is all, but the bottom line is we got to stop looking to some of these old arguments. Well, Bob has always remained consistent, the entire. No, actually he has not. But that's neither. There are some there are some variations in the story. But my thing is, as an investigator and talking with another forensic investigator about this, is it possible that maybe Bob had built the story in his own mind? Because after you don't talk about something for 25 years, now you're being asked to recall it. Now that's the new narrative. That's the new story because you didn't talk about it for so long. So your mind kind of fools you into believing, hey, this is the fact, when really it may or may not have been. And that's why the story differs a little bit from the 1960s to now. So it's little things like that. So in knowing that, now it makes us better defend the film. If you know the facts, it's only going to make you stronger. But that being said, like I said in my post, I'm going to be blunt. But what caused this entire thing is, the word gossip. That's what made this happen. Somebody tells me something face to face. They say, can we keep it between us? I keep it between us. In this case, this did not happen. And what happened is when somebody says, well, and we hear it all the time. I mean, if you don't think it's gossip, it's gossip. Oh, do you believe what Susie said to me? And then what happens? Things start to get out of context. There is gossip always has an element of truth to it, but it has a bias or a twist in it made by the teller. And that's what I think the bias or the misconstruction of it or whatever, that's what got projected. So yes, this was nothing but gossip. When somebody asks something in confidence that you have no evidence to, and you go and start talking about it, that's gossip.
Yeah, I agree. And the whole confirmation bias thing, everybody buys into that. Everybody does that. Everybody's guilty of that. We want to hear what we want to hear, and we want it to confirm exactly what we already believe. So people in the community who have always doubted the story or doubted the validity of the Patterson Gimlin film are going to, of course, latch on and say, aha, here it is. It's an admission, right? Well, those of us who are on the fence are more, I need more information. That's one of the reasons as soon as this came out, I reached out to Russell and invited him on the show to present his side, and I also reached out to you to do the same thing. And you have to get that directly from the people that were involved, right?
Right. And that's why when I first talked to Russell, I didn't think I was getting a straight story. And then I talked to Richter, and and then again when I talked to Richter again and kind of said, listen, I really need to break this down. What was said to you? What about this? What about that? And and just listening and believe me, I wasn't really reading Russell's posts. I had heard what he had said once, and that was it. That was the extent of it. I was keeping away from social media for a few days. Excuse me. And it turns out that, wait a minute, this, number one, the story, people were saying, oh, well, the story was changing. And as I'm looking at the different stories, he's telling the same story. He's just giving a little more detail to some of it. And after, like I said, well, so I start, talking or sending a message out to Russell, and we did not block one another. We did not unfriend one another from Facebook. And I said, listen, and I started talking, and he was very defensive at first. And I said, why don't you call me? He goes, well, what's this call going to be about? So I said, you know what? I'm just going to call him. And much to his credit, he picked the phone up, and we talked. He listened. I said, and we detach the emotion of the situation. I said, I understand he's angry. I understand that. And, after me keep digging into the facts of this, I'm beginning to see this pattern. And this pattern isn't one of deception. It's a pattern. It is a pattern of misunderstanding, because there is, usually when you have a pattern of deception, there's something out in left field, and there was nothing out in left field at all that was going on here. So, it is what it is. And in all fairness, I feel it's wrong to call somebody a liar without evidence, or a hoaxer without evidence. Now, I can't speak to Expedition Bigfoot because, according to Russell, he's under NDAs and can't talk about the show, and I understand that. But we do know there's certain things about that we do not like in the Bigfoot community, and many of us in the field have called Russell a hoaxer because of what's going on the show. So I stand back from that, saying it is TV. We don't call the mountain monster guys hoaxers. So, but again, it's how the show is projected. So, but that has no argument here. That's not part of the argument. But a lot of people, and at first myself included, thinking about that, we're bringing that into it, and I have to sit back and reevaluate. Am I having this gut reaction out of emotion, out of confirmation bias, out of all this other stuff? I take a good look at myself as an investigator. If this was a criminal case and going on, I would have to recuse myself as an investigator, because it's just too much involvement here going on. I need somebody else to take over and make that decision. But luckily, I had the wherewithal to kind of okay, I just need to a few days off from this, then talk to anybody in the Bigfoot world, stuck to myself, and just started looking at things. And then I said, okay, in my own mind, playing this over and over and over again, and we got to rectify this, because I believe this is, but it's going to be based on my conversation with Richter. And, Richter had told me, and much to Richter's credit, Richter could have said, oh, yeah, he told me all about this confession video. Yeah. But Richter didn't. Richter said exactly what was said. So that's credit. So nobody here, I don't think anybody here was trying to be untruthful. But I think everybody on different sides here had the thought that people were being distruthful. I mean, I was accused of lying. Well, I don't lie. That's tenet number 3. Always tell the truth. Honesty is the best policy. You have all this going on, but I actually managed to kind of weed through it. And I've come up. Now, some people may not be happy with that. But again, when you start looking at things, it's not about a popularity contest here. It's about the truth. And the truth is, there is no evidence of a confession video. It was never directly said to anybody, but that's the way it was being portrayed. So, and that is what gossip does. So I got to say, I didn't put it out there. I never would have. It's not my story to put out there. If that was how should I put it? The truth of my interpretation or my interpretation was the truth. It still wasn't my story to put out there. I have no evidence to it. So I can't put it out there, saying, hey, there's this big, I have no evidence to it. I wouldn't have put it out there regardless. And no matter how pissed off I would have been at somebody, I would never have put that out there, because number one, I gave my person the word I wouldn't put it out there. And number two, I've been dog mad at people before in my life that I've known secrets about. I don't go out and blab them to people. And that was asked in confidence. It stays in confidence. That a promise is a promise. Once my name got dragged into it this time around, though, and people were accusing Richard of being a liar, I had to step in and say, no, he's not lying. This was said. And everybody's asking me anyway. So I got, if I had kept mum on the whole thing, then guess what? I would have been, mired in, accusations that I'm covering something up.
As soon as I saw your name in it, I knew when you and I talked a couple of months back, you had alluded to things that you were privy to, but to your credit, you gave me nothing. It was just, hey, I know these things. I'm not putting this out there. It's not for me to share, but and I left that conversation knowing that that guy's got integrity, because this clearly came from somebody in confidence, and he's not going to share it with me off the air or not. So I knew the second I saw your name in it that I could reach out to you.
And a lot of people, even my own team, my girlfriend knew. I think some of my closer friends who know I'm in Bigfoot, but they're not into the field themselves. They may know, they may know it. My girlfriend definitely would know the name, but my friends around me may go, somebody that knows Bob Gimlin, really close to him, they may know that, but they're not people that are going to talk, because again, it's that whole, let's keep this just between you and me and not let this leak out anywhere. But this is really weighing heavily upon me, and it did. Think about that. Think about the effect that it had on me thinking that. And then when people say to me, well, hypothetically, what if the film was fake? Hypothetically, I've been living in that world for the last 15 months. And I'm so glad to be out of it, to tell you the truth. So that is the one good thing about this whole thing, is that I can be more myself and become back to a defender of the film rather than being on the fence about it.
Well, I guess that's a good question to sort of shift to. I was going to ask you, where are you on the film now? I know when we talked back in our first interview, we kind of went back and forth, and both of us were sort of on the fence about it. And I just wanted to know what that's done for your interpretation of the film, and where are you on the authenticity at this point?
Well, I think the work on the film by Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Bill Munns do speak volumes for the film on that aspect. I know Dr. John Napier had criticized the film, and Dr. John Napier was a curator of Smithsonian. He was an anthropologist as well. Believed that the possibility of a Bigfoot could exist, but he was a very big critic of the film. Again, there was no, enhanced or better versions of the day. That was looking at whatever they were showing back in the 70s at the time, and he had said and made a very interesting comment that is true in most scenarios, is that, a sagittal crest is a feature of a male primate rather than a female primate. So why does this creature with a sagittal crest have breasts, or why does this creature with breasts have a sagittal crest? Either or. So that made a bit of sense to me, and why he would do that. But I believe, and I'm not quite sure to pinpoint the exact reference to it, but I believe back in the 90s, there was some discoveries that there are some females that have sagittal crests. And that in talking with Dr. Meldrum, it is a possibility that this may just be a feature because of their strong jaw muscles, that they all have a sagittal crest, females included.
Yeah, there's so many different questions that are raised about the film, and it's 50 plus years now that people have been dissecting this thing. I did a members only show for the podcast a couple of weeks back, and it was focused around the Greg Long Hoax of the Century documentary, right, where he's going in and this guy's clearly got an agenda. He's got this confirmation bias. He's basically making a documentary to confirm what he already believes.
Is that the Greg Long or the John Johnson? Greg Long. Greg Long wrote the book, The Making of Sasquatch. The Hoax of the Century was directed by John L. Johnson and was executive produced by Tom Biscardi. And so that film, that documentary, Hoax of the Century, although there is a new version, and Mr. Johnson claims that the reason why Mr. Biscardi has been scrubbed out of it is because of a lawsuit or whatever. And I'll add the caveat, no surprise there. He claims that it was done because of a lawsuit, and others have claimed that it was done to get the Biscardi name out of it. What's a hoaxer doing in the middle of this, executive producing a film?
Exactly. And the entire time, and I actually literally just got Greg Long's book delivered from Amazon yesterday, because I wanted to go back and read the book and really dive into, what this guy what he was looking into and what he found, right? But the entire film, the entire Hoax of the Century was based on conjecture. It was based on opinion. It was based on hearsay. There was no evidence at all whatsoever to prove the film was a hoax. Outside of Bob Hieronymus saying, it was me in the suit, right? But no evidence has ever been produced, in my opinion, that it was a hoax.
Very true. The evidence is... See, here's the interesting thing. If you ask science, that the evidence that this was a Bigfoot is flimsy. We have some castings which could be faked. We could have, this film which could be a hoax. Conversely, we have the same argument on the other side. Why is this film a hoax? Well, we could assassinate somebody's character, make this conjecture, and turn around and, lay it on lay it on Patterson's shoulders that he faked it. So what? There are so many interesting things. There's facts that another gentleman by the late Leroy Blevins had made too. But to me, it was again more conjecture, ponytailing on. But actually, it was actually quite more interesting than one would think. Whereas Greg Long starts building a motive as to why Roger did this, and is that why that motive possible? I think it would be. There was a movie that came out in '76, Sasquatch: The Legend of Bigfoot, and it was a popular movie for the time, and it says, based on a true story. And people didn't realize at the time that actually Roger Patterson had tried to shoot that film in 1966. And that's why he had Bob Gimlin dressed as a Native American. And part of that film shoot there, that fictional film shoot, was, Bob Gimlin, Bob Hieronymus's brother, Roger, and a few other people. And, Roger and this gentleman, I forget who produced, the name escapes me right now, but they went down to Hollywood and the film didn't sell. But in 1976, after Roger's death, the same guy takes the film and actually makes it into, Sasquatch: The Legend of Bigfoot, and got produced using an entirely new cast, throwing out the old film, the old sizzle reel, I would suppose you would call it, and now using a completely new, fresh cast. And Roger Patterson never gets the writing credits for it, but this guy does.
Yeah, the whole thing fascinates me. I've even had you take a look at what Bill Munns has done on the film, right? One of the things that have really, over the years, convinced me that more so than not that the film was authentic was some of the people like Dr. Meldrum taking a look at it and right. Jeff saying, the kinetics of movement and just all these things, right? Scientific things. Yeah. But Bill Munns has done this work. I mean, he's got thousands and thousands and thousands of scans, HD quality, 4K scans of this film, and he has dedicated years of his life to studying this film. I mean, I've even heard him explain how he could tell based on his knowledge, training, and experience in filmmaking and cameras how the film was started and stopped several times when Roger started filming Patty walking across the sandbar, and how his finger slipped. There's no other physical way to explain this, and he gets really into the minutia of this, but when you hear people talk about that, and he doesn't have a dog in the fight, right? I mean, he's not trying to prove anything one way or the other. He's just looking at what he sees and the evidence that's presented to him, and he's forming a hypothesis. And I tend to lean more towards it being an authentic film. I just haven't seen anything. I always leave that grain of doubt, at the end of this conversation, and probably next week and the week after, I'll still say, I could be convinced if somebody came with evidence saying, hey, here's the evidence, take a look, what do you think? I may be convinced that it was a fake. And of course, if Bob Gimlin were to come out and say, yeah, the film was faked, then I'm not going to be one of these people like, you go into, again, the Coalition for Critical Thinking group, these people are posting memes about, and there's been groups that have actually posted, we stand with Bob, whether this is true or not. Well, yeah, I get that. I mean, and their whole point is, if it's a hoax, then how are you going to stand by somebody who's hoaxed you for 50 plus years? But that's neither here nor there. But
I would dare say that the people who stated that probably really don't believe the film is a hoax. I really don't. I think that if they found out it was a hoax, I think people would be so hurt. I'm speaking from firsthand experience.
Yeah, and I sort of feel the same way. I think I would be certainly disappointed because I like the mystery of it. I like the idea of it being real. I think that's one of the things that people hold on to. But, if you look at it from just a purely scientific point of view or just a practical point of view, I mean, the film being a hoax does not in of itself mean that Bigfoot doesn't exist. And I think some people are sort of hanging their hat on that.
Right. And you know, I've said it before, you know, the Bigfoot world does not, you know, revolve around the Patterson Gimlin film. Quite the opposite. The Patterson Gimlin film revolves around the Bigfoot world. Had it not been for all the sightings and stories for the years previous to the Patterson Gimlin film, you know, had there been nothing, would Roger be out there looking for a Bigfoot? Probably not.
Exactly. And then we would have never seen the footage, and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
And that's a very good point.
And have there not been sightings before and after the film? And finally, I look at it in a very purest sense. The Patterson Gimlin film is just another film, but this time it's got a lot of attention. Why? Because it was the first of its kind.
Exactly.
It was the first of its kind. Yeah. And that's why I got so much traction. You know, has the mystery of Loch Ness become any less sensational? The Loch Ness Monster, has that become any less sensational? You know, when 15, 20 years ago, they found out the surgeon photo was a hoax.
No, if anything, it just increased the attention.
Right. Like, so yeah, you know, and those are some of the things I had to contend with, you know, after what I believe Russell had said to me. You know, you got to understand, I was like, you know, that was my reality for the last 15 months. This film was likely a hoax. And I put likely because I always have that rare chance that, you know, that maybe I was told a lie, or maybe I misconstrued it, or maybe I didn't want to believe it. You know, I know when Richter had said to me the first time, I didn't want to believe it. And that's really what we all have to contend with this film. And this is fairly hypothetical, is to look at yourself in the mirror and say, if Bob Gimlin was to come out tomorrow and say the film is fake, would you believe him?
And I've actually heard people, I've heard people say that, you know, and I've actually heard people say if he came out and said that tomorrow, they wouldn't believe him because they're so convinced by the evidence.
But what evidence? There is no evidence. There is a lot of analysis, but there is no evidence.
Good point.
You know, that's the interesting. I mean, people would say, well, there's the tracks. And I tend to agree with him. I believe tracks are evidence, but you know, it's such a colossal mishmash of stuff when you get into this minutia of it. So the way I look at it is that now that I've had a couple of weeks to realize that, hey, this film we're back to being real again. You know, it is what it is. It's not going to prove anything, and it's okay. It's okay to hold that film in your heart. Like I said, I've defended it in 2006. I defended it against Cal Korff, the man who wrote the introduction to Greg Long's book. And he on the X Zone Radio, which is kind of like Canada's coast to coast AM radio. The last minute, Cal Korff did not want to go live on the air with me. He wanted to have his section done ahead of mine and then let me come on by myself afterwards. So there'd be no interaction, which is really too bad because I think he kind of figured out that he was going to be cut down for his own credibility because he called himself a colonel in the Israeli Special Services. And it turns out that eventually he had to admit that, well, I never said I was part of the Israeli government. The Israeli Special Services is a private security company in Israel. And, oh, so you're a security guard, and then you just happen to have the rank of colonel. That. And the only reason why Colonel Sanders called himself Colonel Sanders is because he was recognized he was given an honorary title of colonel by I believe the National Guard and the governor of Kentucky at the time. So that's why he called himself colonel, because he was actually bestowed that title. But that would be like myself, working for a security guard company and, calling myself colonel because I got promoted to colonel at work.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, any final words that you want to put out there for anybody around this to sort of close this chapter and move forward?
Oh yeah. All I can say is it's just time to move forward. Let's get out there. It's the summertime. It's going to be fall pretty soon. I hate to say that. I mean, we're already in approaching mid-July already. So another couple of months and the cooler weather will be upon us again. And we all know that, September, in many areas, the Squatchers like to get busy. So, let's look forward to getting busy. And I'm very happy that, COVID is, that all these COVID restrictions are starting to lift. And I actually have somewhat of a semblance of a speaking schedule again over the next, believe it or not, through next May already. I've got like 5 different engagements. So, yeah, it's, time to move forward. I am so glad that this chapter and this nightmare of believing that the PG film was a hoax is over with, for me anyway.
Well, I'm definitely glad that it worked out that way as well, because I know that's got to have weighed very heavily on you. What do you have coming up? Anything you want to promote that folks can come out and see you or support you in?
No, actually, my circuit doesn't begin till, I believe, September 25th. It's very compact. I got like 3 events in a period of 1 month, and then we have the winter break, and then I already have a couple for the spring next year. But I'm starting off September 25th, Whitehall, New York, at the Whitehall Sasquatch Calling Festival. I'll be emceeing that festival, giving a presentation, and I'll have a table down there, doing my book thing, doing whatever else, and come see me, say hello.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. Steve Coles, the Squatch Detective. Thanks so much for coming on and sort of clearing the air, man. I really appreciate your time, and I'm hoping that folks will let this chapter rest and lay where it's at, and everybody move forward and get back out in the woods and keep squatching.
Amen to that. Amen. And thanks for having me on, Brian.
Absolutely, man. It was my pleasure. And that's it for tonight's show, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next week.